Hey folks, Robbie Payne with Chrome Unboxed, and today we want to take a quick initial look at the HP Chromebook X2. Now, we were able to actually get our hands on this device from a Best Buy, pretty local to us. The device actually isn't released just yet. It's supposed to be coming out in the first week and a half of the month of June. So by the time you're viewing this video, you can likely get your hands on one probably in a Best Buy store, or soon after you'll be able to do so, or you can go and pre-order one. And hopefully it'll become available through multiple channels in the coming weeks. But we were able to score one a little bit early, and so we wanted to give you some quick impressions. And a quick note about this video, a lot of times we're called Chrome Unboxed, right? So we would normally do an unboxing video, but for this one, we're not going to. The device is right here. What you're seeing in the box is pretty standard Chromebook fare, and so honestly, I don't want to waste your time with all that stuff. We opened it up, everything's in plastic, kind of exactly the way every other Chromebook's ever been packaged up. And so instead we wanted to start taking a different approach with some of these videos whenever the packaging is kind of boring, and actually spend at least a little bit of time, in this case just a little over 24 hours with the device, actually getting in, logging in, using it for a couple things, and just giving you these quick first impressions of the device before we actually get into a full review. So we want to do that exact thing right now. So here we have it. The HP Chromebook X2. Now, if you're watching this and you haven't heard of this device before, this one does a really, really special thing, and that is it's the world's first detachable Chromebook. And so the whole thing just lifts off, it's magnetic. So we'll talk through a few of the things that I've liked so far with it, a few of the things that I'm concerned with, and you're seeing one of them right there, actually putting the thing back together. Sometimes the magnet's just a little bit aggressive, but we'll get there. Overall though, the aesthetic is pretty nice. The device is relatively thin and light, feels really good. We'll talk through a few of the things here before we actually get logged in and up and going, and we'll talk about performance and what I've noticed already so far. But overall, the build quality feels really good. It feels really sturdy. It's not the camera. This thing is white on the top, and now it is aluminum, but it's kind of got some sort of, I don't want to say a paint job. I'm not really sure what they did to get white on here, but it looks very reminiscent of my very first like real Chromebook, the HP Chromebook 14. The bottom is kind of a dark black. You got a pen loop over here for the pen, and you can kind of see this substantial hinge over here on the edge. It's not the most attractive thing in the world, but it's a pretty good looking device, if not pretty functional looking. So as you set it down and open it up, you do notice the top piece is a little bit heavier than the rest of it. And that's just what's expected from a convertible device like this. All of the internals, the battery, everything is in this upper portion here. So it's just kind of the way it's going to be. Now, there's two ways that most companies go about doing a detachable device. And so you have something like this where the hinge takes all of the stress of opening the device up and closing it down. And then you have something like a Surface Pro where there's actually a kickstand on the back that kind of holds the device in place. What's a win here is in your lap, you can pick the device up like this. Now you can feel some wobble, and you can probably see it on camera there, but you can hold the device like this just as you would expect. You can't really do this with a Surface. There's the weird kickstand, and it just kind of gets a little bit awkward. So handling the device feels way more like a clamshell here. Additionally, because of the way this device is laid out, you can just flip this around, drop it on, and now you have kind of your presentation mode or your tent mode if you so prefer. And then when you close it up this way, if you have to carry the keyboard around with you in your kind of tablet mode, you don't have keys on the back. So definitely some benefit here to this form factor. But like I said, there's going to be a little bit of wobbliness whenever it's in laptop mode, just because it doesn't have anything back here holding it and all of its weight's on top. That being said, so far, in my use of it, that hasn't bothered me too much. Using it in my lap hasn't been a big deal. Using it on the desk hasn't been a big deal at all. And you get this kind of nice elevation on the keyboard. And this part feels pretty substantial, even though the top's a bit wobbly. I don't know that there's any way that you can get around that. Going around the device here, we've got a front-facing 5 megapixel and rear-facing 13 megapixel camera. What I'll say really briefly on those, even though those stats are much better than any Chromebook that we've seen before, the camera software in here is still just as bad as it's always been, and it honestly doesn't feel like you have good cameras at all. They're actually very, very terrible to use in real-world usage. So hopefully something's going to happen with the camera. Hopefully we can just get the Google camera on here working on a Chromebook. That would be the easiest path, I would think. But for right now, the cameras just are, they're just terrible to use, if I'm being honest. couple other things about the hardware that are kind of unique. We do have front firing speakers. So they're right here on the left and right portion of the screen, and they're decently loud, and granted, because they're pointed directly at your face, you know, the sound's coming right at you, and you get pretty good stereo separation. So all those things are pluses. They don't have a lot of bass response, but that's not that huge of a deal. Another cool thing that I've noticed is when it's in tablet mode, the power button works as you'd expect on a tablet, puts it right to sleep, wakes it right back up. Volume rockers over here, nice clicky tactile buttons. And when it's in tablet mode and you're carrying it around this way, it's relatively thin. Here's my Pixel 2 for reference. It's in a case, and so the Pixel 2 is a little bit thicker because of that. It's roughly the same thickness, and definitely light enough to use as a tablet. I've held it and read some books, watched some movies, videos, all that kind of stuff, and so it's been actually really good in this mode. I've been really impressed. Chrome OS still needs a little bit of work in tablet mode in general, but overall, it's been pretty cool. Okay, last few notes about the hardware. The keyboard in general, it's sitting on this like faux leather deck here, and it's pretty comfortable. The keys are well spaced. They have a decent amount of click, and they have a decent amount of travel. I mean, HP usually puts pretty good keyboards. If you've used the Chromebook 13, you're gonna feel pretty much at home here. I really don't have any complaints about the keyboard. I kind of missed my Pixelbook while I was using it for the day or so, but in general, it works really well, and I'm quite pleased with that. The trackpad equally is good. It's not as good as a Pixelbook. It's not, I don't think it's glass. I'm not quite sure, but it's relatively smooth, resists oils pretty well, and the click mechanism is great, so no complaints there at all. It's got plenty of space and size, and overall, just the input methods feel pretty good so far. We'll see as time goes by if the keyboard gives me any issues. There is one problem I've come across already. We've reached out to HP, and we haven't heard anything back yet, specifically on this one. But HP lists this with a backlit keyboard. We've had some pictures from people with their keyboards being backlit. This one, we've moved all the way up to developer mode just to see if we could get it working. No backlighting on the keyboard. And yes, I've tried alt brightness up and down. Nothing happens. I've had plenty of Chromebooks with backlit keyboards, so I kind of know how to make it work and not work. And so none of that's in question. It just seems like the device doesn't have it. And so I'm not sure if it doesn't have it or if it's an issue. We're waiting to see on that, but you know, it's an early build of the software, and it's a little bit of an early build of the device itself. So we probably really need to wait until mid-June before we make a judgment call on that. We'll talk about that more in the full review. But overall, you know, the hardware is nice. You're getting dual USB-C ports. You have a headphone jack, and they were at least thoughtful enough to put those USB-C ports down below. So plugging in, I worked from this thing for an entire day. Having those down there makes a lot of sense. A lot of tablet type devices, they'll put them in weird spots, and so then you've got a dongle sticking out of the side of this thing when it's sitting at a desk. So overall, I really didn't feel like I was moving on from my Pixelbook that much. It didn't feel like, oh gosh, you know, sometimes I go to test a device and I'm used to using a Pixelbook, and I go slide something else in, and it's troubling to have to use something that's a little cheaper, a little less well made, and this device didn't feel that way at all. I didn't feel like I really missed a beat. Just kind of got in with my work and did what I needed to do, and it handled all those things. Last thing I'm going to talk about real quick is performance thus far. Like I said, I've worked at least one full day on this thing, so all of the workload I normally put on a Pixelbook, I've put on this thing, and it rolled right through it without any issue. This is the Core M3, so it's a 7th gen Core M3 with 4 gigs of RAM, 32 gigs of internal storage. It does have an SD card slot, so you can add storage to it, which is nice. Pixelbook doesn't have that. It's got huge internal storage, but this one has the ability to add it from the side. But what really shocked me whenever I got into using this device was it didn't seem to hiccup through anything. And so I was like, well, I'm going to run a few benchmarks on it real quick. And my Pixelbook usually gets around 27,000 on Octane. And yes, I know it's been retired, but it's still a great benchmark for us to kind of test against other devices. This one's getting about 25,000. So that Core M3 jump from 6th gen, which is what's in the Samsung Chromebook Pro, to the 7th gen is a massive, massive improvement. There was no stutter, no hiccups, no issues whatsoever. Animation stayed great. It's got the same high resolution screen, the exact same panel that's in the Pixelbook, so that's why I haven't even talked about the screen. It's a 3:2 aspect ratio, 2400 by 1600, super bright, 400 nits, nice and high res, but sometimes all those extra pixels make things move a little bit slow, as we saw on the Samsung Chromebook Pro and Plus. Not the case here. This thing just powered right through it, no problem. Again, from a performance standpoint, I didn't feel like I was stepping way down from a Pixelbook. And so the last thing I want to say, because again, I need to spend more time with this before we get a review. The last thing I want to say on this is this thing is 600 bucks. The Pixelbook in general, there's some sales that are going on here and there, but in general, the Pixelbook's $1,000. If I were to look at somebody and they want a high performance machine and they're going to spend some decent amount of money on it, it would be hard for me so far. I don't want to put everything out on the table yet, but it would be hard for me so far not to point them in the direction of this device right now. The versatility of the tablet, the beauty of the screen, the quality of the build thus far, the pen input, the pen comes with the device. It's a similar pen that the the Pixelbook has. Everything kind of lines up and you get that Pixelbook type experience, and it's $400 cheaper. So that can't be understated. There's gonna be an i5 8 gig device coming out of this, but I just don't know that you would need it. And so, you know, we need further testing here. I'm gonna work a few more days from it, spend some time doing some other things, let the kids really kind of dig into it, all that kind of stuff, and we'll cover all that stuff in the review. But initially, after just, you know, a little over a day of use, I'm pretty impressed. This thing is pretty nice. And again, the form factor is a little clunky, and I'm kind of learning my way around dealing with handling a detachable device at all times. But in general, for what you're getting for your dollar, this thing's gonna be really, really hard to beat for the rest of 2018. But guys, that's it for this one. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and until next time, we'll see you.